Aquí estamos, esto es una sesión más. Bienvenidas, bienvenidos y bienvenides a Espectros de la Comunidad. Aquí estamos del Cuadrado Gris, Barrio Obrero, Puerto Rico, para el mundo. Veo. Y hoy tenemos una invitada muy especial, pero primero voy a presentar a mis compañeros. ¿Cómo estamos?
Saludos.
Fernando Sosa.
Buenas noches, muy buenas noches a todos.
Julio Valdejuli.
Luis Valdejuli, ¿qué tal? Mucho gusto. Saludos a todos también.
Es que estuve un fin de semana bien fuerte. Pero nada, aquí estoy de nuevo. Mi cabeza se volvió a su lugar y aquí estamos.
Como diría Liza Minnelli, Luis with an L.
Exacto.
Bueno, por lo menos te pasó conmigo con uno de los de las personas entrevistadas que lo conozco hace igual de 1000 años y le seguía diciendo Tony en vez de James. Y eso se volvía y se repetía y él me miraba así como que espérate, hello, vas a seguir, mano.
Espera, vamos a darnos un aplauso por todos los errores que tuvimos en nuestra vida y en este programa.
¡Bravo!
Bueno, Luis, cuéntanos un poco a quién tenemos hoy aquí en el programa.
Hoy tenemos una invitada bien especial desde Filadelfia, PA. Ella es madre, oradora, escritora, emprendedora y sobreviviente de VIH durante 11 años. Desde su diagnóstico ha encontrado una gran fortaleza y es una sólida sonadora al abogar por muchos problemas que plagan continuamente a su comunidad. Esto incluye prevención y concientización sobre el VIH, educación sobre el herpes y conversaciones sobre la salud mental. Aunque ella no es un profesional médico, no puede dar asesoramiento médico, pero pone a la gente en contacto y los vincula con otras personas que son fuentes confiables y que le puede brindar toda la ayuda que necesitan y el asesoramiento necesario que están buscando. Su trabajo incluye compartir sus experiencias personales, a veces extremadamente explícitas, a través de su propio blog, Is Voluntary, así como para la plataforma internacional The Well Project y su otro blog, A Girl Like Me. Con nosotros está doña Ciarra Covin, que le llamamos Sisi.
Y tenemos un video para mostrar al principio para introducir a Ciarra.
Vamos a poner un video un momentito, sí.
Stigma can change your whole life. I know because it has changed my whole life. So picture it. Early diagnosed, 20 years old, sitting inside of a provider's office. I asked them if I would be able to have children now that I was a woman living with HIV. That provider proceeded to tell me that I would be able to have children as long as I realized that all of my children would be orphans. That changed my life because now, early in my 20s, I'm saying here, like, okay, if I have a child now, then maybe I'll be able to live until that child is at least 18. I'll be 40. I can make it to 40, and I can see this child graduate. That was not the truth. And that's why I make it my responsibility to continue to educate and empower those around us because stigma can be life-changing. So, F stigma, F your opinion, and we working with facts.
Yes.
Wonderful. Empowerment 100%.
Welcome, Sisi.
Welcome, Sisi.
That's what it's all about. That's what it's all about. Sisi, really, I'm so glad to have you in our show, in our program. And one thing that I'm really excited about is the fact that you're our first woman of African descent in our program. And that to me is always very special and important, being that I am also a man of African descent, and so I pay a lot of attention to that. So welcome to the program, and we want to have a conversation with you in relationship to all your activism and everything that you have done to change the life of women living with HIV. Can you tell us about your experience and all that you've done and people that you've come across that also have been pioneers in the struggle?
Of course. Thank you all for having me. I'm so excited. Never thought, in 2021 that I would be the first African American anything. So this is so exciting.
Wow.
I also have roots in the Caribbean. My father's Jamaican, so I kind of feel like we're all connected a little
Oh, wonderful.
bit, right?
Yes, we are.
Wonderful.
Okay, so my name is Ciarra Covin. I have been living with HIV now for about 13 years in June. And my big thing right now that I'm working on is breastfeeding and HIV. It seems like, women often get left out of the conversation of HIV as if we're not being affected as much as any other population, which we are. We
Hmm.
get left out of conversations, we get left out of research, we get left out and thought about last, it seems like often. And at this point now in 2021, we know that U equals U, undetectable equals untransmittable. Thank God for that. But now, we want to extend that conversation a little bit more. We know that it can't be passed sexually. Now, my big activism and advocacy work is happening in breastfeeding, chest feeding, and HIV. So I'm working with the Well Project, which I love, absolutely love. That's a global organization that focuses on women, cis and trans women, and their needs. And those that may, not get the conversation of HIV normally, and those who are also living with the virus. So we have fact sheets. We have a community of women that share their stories. That blog that you mentioned in the intro is A Girl Like Me. We also have a Spanish version of that as well.
Pues ahí tuvimos una leve interrupción. Creo que vamos a volver a recuperarla en breve.
And it's an amazing community. So no matter where you're living in the world, we can find support there. I come across women from all parts of the world. So we have global ambassadors in India, in Nigeria, in America that are just spreading the word of empowerment and advocacy, when
And
it
I think
comes to
it's
HIV.
wonderful because usually, like you say, women often get left out of the HIV conversation. In Puerto Rico, I believe that primarily um, those that use drugs, that inject drugs, are most of the cases today that are coming up with HIV. So they are the ones that are usually, receiving the coverage and the press and the care, and women are being left behind also in Puerto Rico.
And that's so unfortunate because, women are such big driving forces in this world.
Yeah.
We make the babies, we
Yes.
do stuff.
Definitely.
So, that is very unfortunate. And I'm one of those ones, and there are many of us out here that are fighting for things to be different there.
Well, I'm going to refute that somehow because women are not being left out in Puerto Rico. There are women that are that have formed their own organization. Women that are very empowered. There's a woman called Yvette, which I forget her name, and I also forget. I'm sorry. I also forget what her organization is. But there are women that are empowered and that have made very big changes in um, how they're treated in terms of care. So, um, no, women are being taken care of, I think, because it's not like it used to be in the beginning. I mean, of course, there was a time when that, of course, was going on, and that's why there was a big need for activism, and women did come out and make big changes. As a matter of fact, I think most women that are in the forefront right now in the fight against HIV are mostly women in Puerto Rico. So when it comes to care in general, um, I have a question for you. You've been positive for 11 years. How has
13, sorry.
I'm sorry?
13. It's 13,
13
sorry.
years. Okay.
Yeah.
How has it changed since you were first diagnosed? What changes have you seen?
Oh,
I
Lord.
mean,
I, I just wrote a blog called Midterm Survivor because I know I don't have enough years positive to call myself a long term survivor. I definitely give, much respect and gratefulness to those who came before me, because they were the ones that were early on in the fight. But now I'm not a newly diagnosed individual either. So I have some experiences and I have seen some changes, such as U equals U. That was not in place when I first got diagnosed with HIV. Um, so when I first got diagnosed, I was still having to tell people that there was, even though I was undetectable, that there was still a 2% chance that I could transmit HIV to them. But now I'm able to confidently say to an individual that no, I'm undetectable, so I cannot transmit HIV to you. And that's life changing. So I can only imagine what that was like, in the earlier days.
Right. It's interesting that you're saying this because you also mentioned the fact that you were concerned about breastfeeding, right? I haven't been really paying. Of course, I know how things have changed through the years, and of course there was a conversation at one point on whether you were able to transmit the condition to your child, right? And of course through medication that was no longer possible, right? Um, you mentioned breastfeeding. Why is breastfeeding a concern to you?
Because I should be offered that option. That's what, you have a baby, and that breastfeeding has so many great benefits for the child and for the mother. And just depending on your placement in the world, kind of dictates what you're able to do and not do, with your own body. And so many of these providers make that decision for you. If I were living in Africa, most parts of Africa, bottle feeding and formula feeding wouldn't even be an option. But because I live in America and we have access, they say, to clean water and things like that, now breastfeeding isn't supposed to be an option per CDC guidelines. So yes, that's a very important thing to me, and I'm grateful for the strides that have been made. No, I did not transmit HIV to my first child, who was born 10 years ago. And very high chances are that I will not transmit that virus to this child either. But it doesn't just stop there. Breastfeeding is something that many of us, elect to do and want to, and we should
Right,
have that option from our providers.
right.
Okay.
Yeah, because the reason why I ask you that question is because I thought maybe, of course, as a mom, I know that's very important, right? For you to be able to breastfeed your child. But I was more wondering if you felt that you can. I mean, the concern is that you can still transmit the virus through breastfeeding.
That's where we need more research. There has
Okay,
been research done in countries,
right.
other countries outside of the US.
Okay,
We're urging for that research to be done here, instead of, it just being cut and dry that you can't do it. So the chances are extremely low in what we're seeing in other countries,
right.
but we need the research done here.
Yeah. Because although it's in the United States, although it's not necessary, many women want to breastfeed and they want to have the choice to breastfeed.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You in your organization, this is definitely a topic, right? That you're constantly having with all these with women from all these countries that are coming in touch with your organization. Is that's part of the conversation? Always, the breastfeeding aspect.
That has been a conversation that's been going on in the HIV community for a while. But the WOW project, within the last few years, we sat down with like 23 experts from all different fields of knowledge, and we did an expert consensus statement. So we have psychologists, medical doctors, all different types of people. And we sat down and we talked about the benefits and the risk of women living with HIV and breastfeeding, infant feeding. And many people agree that this is something that should be looked into more. So we have a document that we've put out and we're urging and asking for people to sign on to because it is getting some traction, a lot of traction actually. We just sat down with at the International Workshop on HIV in Women under VIVO Healthcare. We sat and we did a conversation with them on breastfeeding. My executive director, she presented on breastfeeding and HIV. So it is gaining traction. And this is for women living in the United States in North America, so United States and Canada. Because other parts of the world already have, things in place where their citizens
And
can breastfeed.
you guys have a website that I want to show. If let me see.
The World Project.
Okay, you have
Yeah.
that website. That's also you have a lot of places where you can hit and see, no? But if we go to the main page,
Yeah, but Ciarra, you had your own blog first, right? And
which
then
is, which is
you
a
were
girl like me.
no wait, no. It was
No?
Healing is Voluntary, right?
Yes.
And then from there they approached you to join the World Project, right?
Yes.
As
I
a
reached
as a
out
as
to
a
one of
blogger,
their members.
as a blogger.
Yes.
Okay, so you write a lot for them. That's excellent because that's an excellent way to reach more people.
Yes, I write about things that we don't talk about in our community.
Uh-huh.
And HIV is one of those things. Sexual trauma is one of those things. Poverty, things that really affect us and are traumatizing as we continue to grow into our adulthood that we don't address. I talk about it.
And I celebrate that your work began even before the World Project. You were already working on this,
Yes.
which is excellent.
By myself, because I realized that you have to start changing your world with yourself, and then it
Yes.
just starts to become a ball. So now I'm even doing work with the Centers for Disease Control as one of their ambassadors. Let's stop HIV together. So I get to talk to people on the larger scale about this is all of our jobs. So not just the person living with HIV, the people who are not living with HIV, we all have a responsibility in this.
I'm very curious. During those 4 years of Trump's presidency, I know that he had an anti-trans policy. Did you feel that in those 4 years, the work that your organization was doing came to a halt in reference to the trans community, the trans women of color community? Were they affected by those 4
I would
years?
definitely say that they were affected, but I would not say that the work came to a halt. I'm very fortunate to work with organizations that recognize that cis women and trans women are all women, and we continue to be their allies, and we, support them in everything. So the Well Project, you'll see, we are very, very respectful and supportive in that community as well. So I can't speak, I'm not a trans woman, but I definitely am an ally, and we haven't stopped working.
And you were able to continue reaching out to all of your followers through the internet, which is good for during the COVID pandemic.
Absolutely. The Well Project actually started as an online organization, so they've been ahead of the curve for a long time. We don't have a brick and mortar office, so we've been doing this. So COVID just kind of allowed us to get better at the things that we were already doing.
Excellent. And the World Project is also translated in Spanish for our followers, so they can follow the page also if they want to do it in Spanish.
Yes, we work very hard on that. We have about 135 fact sheets on all different types of topics, and many of them have been translated already into Spanish. We're working on that every day. So if there is something that you understand more in your native tongue, which we're trying to do is reach everyone in their native tongue. that can be accessed there. You can write in Spanish on the site. You can reach out to other women who are living with HIV and who primarily speak Spanish. Like, we're trying to reach
Excellent.
everyone.
Ciarra, what would you say to some 20-year-old black women that just found out in 2021 that she is HIV positive? What would you say
Your
to her?
life is not over. Life is not
Right.
over. Find you a team, find you some support because we're out here. There is still so much life to live. And the stigma is probably the thing that hurts us the most. An internal stigma can be a major part of that, but community is so, so important. And give me a hug because I love the discomfort.
I think that's a wonderful advice.
Excellent message.
And there is a lot of course, you would definitely direct this person to organizations or support groups that are available. And how are these? Are there many alternatives back where you are for some young 20-year-old women that just found out she's HIV positive? Are there many places where she can go and aside from your organization, are there other places available?
Yes, of course, I'm so biased, so I want everybody to come to me. But yes, in most,
Yeah.
in Philadelphia, I know that in my own doctor's office that we had support groups that ran throughout the day, or therapy, or another group that may not be primarily HIV, but you may run into people that are living with HIV in those groups. There is support everywhere. I would always recommend starting with an online search because it seems like a wealth of information in one place.
Hmm.
And search, maybe HIV support groups in my city, and you should be able to link with someone. Social media is a great resource.
Right.
Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, you're bound to find someone who is living through what you're living through at this moment.
I want to ask you a question. I don't know if this is, well, no, but I don't know. This is probably not a personal question, but is your partner also HIV positive?
No.
Great.
I've never,
Great.
besides the man that I contracted the virus from, I've never been with anyone that was living with HIV.
Wonderful. And
Yeah,
so,
I've been married and divorced and, with a new baby. And no one has HIV.
okay, wonderful. So that talk was pretty easy, because the reason why I'm bringing that up is because, for instance, I've had encounters with people that had no idea about me, and in the middle of some sexual exchange, when things started getting heated, they would stop me in the middle of it and say, "Oh, I'm HIV positive," and that is a really difficult talk to have. And if it's difficult in the LGBTQ community, I can imagine how difficult it is in the heterosexual community. So it's great that, because I know for a fact that that conversation is being had and people are more open to it, but then I know that it's still stigmatized. So
And also there is a lot of work to do, no?
right,
To
exactly.
inform and educate everybody
Exactly.
Yes.
outside the community.
Especially about you equals you, so they know that there's no need to be that scared. There's things that can be done.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
know. I know here for a fact the government is not really doing much. There are women and people in general that are doing their own activism, but the government in general, it seems like you would think that there's no like HIV propaganda anywhere anymore. So you would think that HIV is gone, that it doesn't exist, and it's not. That's far away from the truth.
The numbers are rising.
exactly. So, you mean that propaganda still should be there? Is it there where you are? Is there still that, within marginalized communities? Is there still that, you know HIV propaganda?
Is the conversation going
Is there
on?
conversation going
Yeah.
on?
Yes, and I think sometimes what happens is the information is often there, and we disconnect ourselves so much that we don't think it has anything to do with us, so we ignore it. So right now, running in America or the states, we have PrEP commercials.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
PrEP is
Yes.
the
Right.
pill that you can take once a day that would
Yeah.
protect you if you were exposed to HIV. It would stop the HIV infection from happening. So we have commercials, we have posters, billboards.
Hmm.
The information is there, but so many people think that HIV has nothing to do with them,
Yeah.
and they ignore it.
No, and the problem here is that in Puerto Rico we don't get the commercials. We get the commercials through cable, the ones from the states. So if you don't have cable TV or if you don't watch TV, you'll never see those ads.
Yeah.
No,
Yep.
and there was a time when we did have those commercials, but even those commercials were stigmatized. They used like the shock value and the scare tactic,
Yeah.
in order to keep, they were stigmatizing people, through these commercials. They were stigmatizing people with HIV. It's like there was one particular one that said the other face of AIDS, for instance, and the other face of AIDS was like this beautiful woman, blonde woman, of course, white,
Hmm.
blonde, Puerto Rican woman looking into the mirror, and all of a sudden, what she saw was a monster on the other side.
Yeah.
I mean, that was the kind of commercials we were getting at some point, which is
Mhm.
kind of sad.
Yeah, but the ones that Cece's talking about, the ones that we get here in cable, are very modern, and they have cis, they have trans, they have gay, they have everything, and
Yeah.
they're very good ads for PrEP, and for the other one that's for PrEP, I forgot the name of it, but we don't get them in Spanish, and we don't get them in local TV.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we don't know.
Wow.
There's no such thing going on here.
No,
And like I said, you would think that it was the end of AIDS,
no,
of HIV. I mean, it no longer
no. The
exists.
conversation is dead in
It,
Puerto Rico.
so um, do you speak, like, for instance, have you I know that, I mean, I want to continue bringing up the trans up to- of- women of trans women of color. Um, is and I don't know if I asked you this before. I'm age. My age is. I mean, I forget things really quickly. But do you do is there organizations? I mean, do you get to speak to trans women of color from other countries? Have you has that happened?
So I know in my experience, my exposure to them usually comes through our conferences. So, the United States Conference on HIV and AIDS, I've seen an exhibit, and I believe that exhibit was of trans women from Asian countries. We do work with Ariana Center. That's one of
Right,
our
right.
partners. And I absolutely love her. So, that's been my exposure to women who are trans women. Um, and I believe that's a Hispanic
It is,
organization.
yeah.
I absolutely adore the Positive Women's Network. They do a lot of work with women who are trans women. And I'm not sure if all of them are in America or if there are other countries, but most of my exposure has been when we're able to get to different conferences and stuff.
Okay. Did you get to meet some of the women that are doing, some of the trans women that are doing work here in Puerto Rico, here on this trip? Like, on,
Not while on this trip, but I get to meet them over in America. Well, I keep saying America, y'all part of us. Over
in
in
this
the United States.
uh-huh.
in the
Um
mainland.
I Ariana, the founder of Ariana Center, like she's one of the first trans women that I ever got to meet when I started doing this work. Phenomenal.
Right.
phenomenal.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how, even in a community like where I come from, which is a lower income community, majority like Black and Hispanic, how stigmatized, even that community is, and how, mistreated, and how we often aren't exposed to those that are living. Doing this HIV work has definitely taught me a lot about that culture.
Great. And
Right.
so back home, are you are you do you come into I'm sorry, do you come in touch with trans women of color while at where you are based? Is there a big community of trans women in
Yes, there is.
there
Yes.
is?
And when I go to the doctor, I just switched my doctor since I've been pregnant, but my doctor's in what they would call the neighborhood of Philadelphia.
Mm,
Mm-hmm.
And so I would go to the doctor with a lot of trans women and maybe trans men too, but definitely, yes.
okay.
And I'm learning how to use pronouns and stuff now. This isn't something that I knew how to do before. I didn't know, because that was not my experience, not my
Right.
world.
Right,
I never knew
right.
how important it was to other people, but I'm learning and I'm being respectful of that.
Good.
Right, because you mean with the new inclusive language?
Everybody's
Is that what
learning.
you're? Yeah, we had a conversation about that before we started the program. And it's great that people are being included. Something. It's really wonderful because um, I know how scarce it was when I was an activist in the '90s. I know that there weren't many things available, especially for people of color. And to see that there's all these different organizations that are doing and they're doing outreach to people of marginalized community, I'm really, it makes me so happy, that this is going on.
Mm.
And it also makes me feel very happy that trans women of color are being included, and they have their space. Not just, I mean, in general, even even in the networks,
Mm.
television, movies, and just in general. Um, I think it's very positive what's going on. I think the changes have been really big. I think it's important that we have women like you
Mhm.
that decided to take control of, you decide to take control of your life. You decided to
And speak up.
examine, what your body was going through and transmit that through the to the world. And that is important. And for that, we really thank you.
No, and it's very good.
You know,
Like what's Audre Lorde had a poem about even when you're silent, you still feel afraid. It's good that you're not silent, that you're speaking up, and especially about unique challenges that women face who have HIV. It's very, very good. Thank you, Cece, for that work.
yeah,
Thank
it's great to have had you on the program. Is there anything you can kind of put out there so that people that are watching this program could take away from you as a powerful um,
That's the next question that I wanted to ask. How is the
yeah.
approach? How is an approach of a woman with HIV with you guys? What's the procedure? So the person goes to the website, and then what happens? How,
You can click around as much as you want to. There's a link on the site that says connect with us or get connected. You can reach out. You can become a blogger. You can reach out to any of the people who have blogged already. You can visit us on our Twitter, our Facebook, our Instagram. There are so many ways to get connected. We have different groups. Um, And things that I would tell, anyone is HIV is a lot closer to you than you would ever think. You probably know someone living with HIV, but they are too afraid to open their mouths and say anything, which is unfortunate. So if you're living with HIV, I just want you to know that we got this. If you're not living with HIV, I want to help you stay negative. So that's always my, my goal and my ambition behind all of this. Just be kind to each other. We're all humans, and we're not a threat to one another.
Exactly. Yeah, and we all deserve to have a good quality of life.
And let me tell everyone, the website is thewellproject.org. Thewellproject.org.
Yes.
Great.
Well, Cici, thank you so much.
Thank you
for coming on our show, on our program.
She was diving today, so she was tired and she was doing everything that she can do before leaving Puerto Rico.
We didn't notice. You look
Puerto
fabulous.
Rico's beautiful, okay? I love it here. I eat pinchos and tortillas. Beautiful.
Did you see some beautiful marine life while you were scuba diving?
Yes.
Yeah, great.
Yes, it was beautiful. Oh my God. And I can't eat one more pastelillo, okay? No more. I'm gonna be fat.
Yeah,
for visiting us.
that was brought in from Africa. A lot of the food that we eat here were brought in from from Africa. So
you can tell, like my dad from Jamaica, we eat the same stuff. We just call it different names.
exactly,
Right.
exactly. Conch, right? Conch. We eat that too.
Yeah.
We call it ay Dios mío, carrucho. We call you call it conch, no? Conch in Jamaica.
Yes.
Okay,
yes,
so we
yes.
call it carrucho here. We eat the same.
Or what? We eat saltfish, and you call it
Bacalao.
Bacalao.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, we're all attached somehow. So anyway, thank you so much.
Thank you,
It was
sir.
really a pleasure meeting you. I hope that we can have a conversation with you again. And thank you. And have a safe trip back home.
And keep up the good work.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you
you.
so much, Cici.
Pues esto ha sido otra jornada más de Espectros de la Comunidad. Thank you, everybody. See you next week,
Gracias a
Wednesday,
todos.
8 p.m. Don't forget
Bye bye.
that. Bye-bye.
Gracias a todos.
Bye, Cici.